Hello, everyone. In today's podcast, we are going to talk about the issue of inflation, and we have seen that the inflation is one of the major issues that we are facing in today's economic landscape. And as per one of the research, 90% of the people think that inflation is something that going to have an adverse impact on their well-being, and many of them also think that inflation is sort of a hidden tax on their wealth. So let's try to understand the issue of inflation and what is our understanding or what our thinking about what's going to be the future projection about the inflation, whether it's going to be a short run issue or it's going to be there for some time. So first try to understand what the inflation is. So in a normal analogy, we can say that an inflation is basically increase in the price of overall consumable goods or a basket of the goods that a person need to consume to ensure satisfaction of its basic needs. So that's include health, education, food, house, etc. and fuel, obviously. So these are the sort of commodities that are within a certain basket, and if the price of all of these commodities are increasing, then we can say that there is an inflation in the market. And as of now, we can see that in majority of the in major part of the globe, we can see there is a sort of a double-digit inflation, and we have seen that that almost every central bank have increased the policy rate to basically ensure that consumption or the demand is within certain limit to ensure further that there is no significant increase in inflation. But with all of these policy measures, what we have seen that there is still a sort of inflation going on in the market, and the inflation is increasing. So what we try to understand in this particular podcast is that why the policy measures are not working, and how policy measure is counterintuitive in a way that though a central bank thinks that it will going to solve a problem, but what we are experiencing as of now is that it's increasing certain other problems versus solving the problem in hand. So whenever central bank think to basically control the inflation, the first thing in their mind is basically to curtail the consumption, and a way to curtail is basically to increase the interest rate, because it would motivate the consumers to not consume more and basically place whatever their surplus wealth in the saving accounts. But and at the same time, it also motivate industrialists or factory managers to basically produce less, or to produce to an extent to cover their fixed costs, and whatever the surplus is to basically place into the saving accounts, because the rate of saving would be greater than would be far more versus what they would be able to earn by selling certain units. So there's this sort of a thinking behind this policy measure. But if we see into the real world, what we are seeing is that the reason of the inflation is not because people want to consume more or because they have more wealth, though the central banks think so, because what they are thinking or where they are coming from is that during the COVID period, there were certain groups which were not able to consume due to the lockdown, and at the same time there were certain cash transfers happen from government to the public, which help increase their wealth. And as there was no avenue at that particular point in time, so those cash transfer converted into the wealth, and now as the market is opening up, the people would want to consume more. So that's one of the thinking when central bank think about this demand problem. But if we look into the data, what we can substantiate from that is the wealth that consumer are able to get from this cash transfer is still less versus what they have lost during the financial crisis of 7-8. So technically, COVID helps the consumer to basically to basically build up whatever they have lost to a certain extent, but not fully. So in a certain way, we can say that they are just trying to compensate the wealth that they have lost. So so this particular analogy or this particular data suggests that if a person is just compensating its wealth or try to reach at the pre-crisis level, it wouldn't motivate them to basically consume more, but it would be a reversed psyche here, that they want to accumulate more wealth so that they can increase their wealth from a pre-crisis level. So now the question is that then what are the factors that are resulting in this increase in inflation? Because inflation is real. If it's not driven by the demand, then what are the causes? So so the other way of thinking about the inflation is to basically look on the supply side of the economy, which means that there are certain shortages with respect to supply, or there are certain disruption in the supply. And with respect to that, what we can observe around the world is that there are certain crises going on which are impacting the supply side of economy. So one is the Russia-Ukraine crisis, which have impacted significantly on the overall supply chain. At the same time, we have seen a sort of a trade war happening between US-China on certain tech-related products, and now we are seeing a sort of a crisis in Middle East where Israel have invaded Gaza, and we have seen a lot of a disruption there as well with respect to oil and the fluctuation of oil prices. So these could be some of the reasons which we should look into to understand the problem of inflation. Now, if we look into this particular problem, what we can analyze is that the increasing the interest rate or the policy rate is not going to help curtail the inflation, because today the inflation is not demand driven, but it's more it's more due to the supply related factor. So the thing is that to ensure that to basically curtail or to decrease the inflation, we have to ensure that all of these flash points or all of these geopolitical conflict are being resolved as soon as possible. And at the same time, we have to also look into the situation that as the central banks are increasing the interest rate, it has a negative impact on whatever the investments the banks have placed, and most of them are in the bond market, and those also in the long-term bonds having the maturity of more than 10 years. So in that particular sense, what's happening is that as the central bank is increasing the policy rate, the fair value of the bond having a lower interest rate and the maturity of 10 years are losing their value, and most of the companies, because of the high interest rate, don't want to finance their business via bank loans. So they are now more into using their capital. So they are asking bank to basically encash whatever their savings and deposit are, but at the same time, bank have not much sufficient liability with them, because they have placed a lot of fund into the bonds having maturity of 10 years. So there's a sort of a liquidity crunch going on due to this increase in the interest rate, because because the borrowers are now looking to use their own funds versus using the bank financing, and at the same time, bank have no liquidity because they have invested the funds into the longer term bonds. So the increase in interest rate is now becoming a sort of a counterintuitive policy measure, and it's resulting in a sort of a crisis on the monetary side as well. And as per certain reports, the liquidity of banks is much lower versus what we have seen during the financial crisis period. So the thing is, from a future projection point of view, what we are seeing is that the problem of inflation would remain there, but at the same time, we would see a problem of liquidity becoming a sort of an issue as well. So at the end, the most important thing that we must understand is that if we want to resolve the issue of this inflation, it could only be resolved if we are able to curtail whatever the geopolitical tension going on, and we have to understand that what is the motive behind these geopolitical conflict. Are they driven by the humanity, or there is certain capitalist agenda behind it? So once we are able to understand that particular issue, then we would be able to understand that how we could resolve it. We would discuss this in some other video, but for now, this is all. Thank you so much.